Hare Krishna. Question: should the Bhagavad-Gita be made the national book of India? Answer: this topic, which had at one time become very heavily discussed and debated in the Indian media, keeps periodically resurfacing, and on this occasion we'll discuss about the broad principles, and at a time when there is not so much political heat on the issue, we can discuss it with more objectivity. So the first concern about the Bhagavad Gita becoming the national book of India, the first and foremost concern that was there was that India is a secular country, and why should the book of one religion be made into a national book? Now this objection that the declaration of, say, the Bhagavad Gita as the secular book, as the national book of India, will go against the secular fabric of India, this comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what a national book means. Now, for example, say if it is said that a particular river is the national river of India, a particular animal is the national animal of India, a particular bird is the national bird of India. Now, does that mean that all other rivers, all other animals, all other birds are going to be discriminated against, are going to be tortured, are going to be exterminated? No, not necessarily. If a particular bird, particular animal, particular river, particular song, if that has had a significant influence on India, if it has become a significant part of the identity of India, if it has touched India in a particularly significant way, then it is recognized as a national symbol, national whatever, animal, bird, river, or whatever. So in no way does that mean that the others of that same group, same genre, are to be trivialized or rejected. So same way, yes, India is a country with many religions, and especially there has been tension among several religions for quite some time now, and that is why there is the concern of one upsmanship coming up when a particular book is made into a national book. But the Bhagavad Gita being made into a national book is not a statement of discrimination against the sacred books of other religions, nor is it meant to be trivializing those books or whatever insights and wisdom is contained in those books. The simple point for the rationale for the Bhagavad Gita becoming the national book of India can be talked in terms of its historical influence, its contemporary relevance, its non-sectarian essence, and its global appeal. So, with these four things, we will talk about how the Bhagavad Gita has influenced India, not only India in terms of Indians' way of looking at things and Indians' way of acting, but also influenced India in terms of the way the country is pursued by the world in significant ways, in ways that no other book in this country has influenced. And it is not in the sense of replacing or displacing or denigrating any other book, but it is simply in the sense of acknowledging this distinctive position of the contribution of Gita to India's formation and India's global influence, global standing. That is what we are talking about when we talk about the Bhagavad Gita being considered the national book of India. So let's look at one by one. Historical influence. For at least a millennia, almost a millennia and a half, the Bhagavad Gita has been one of the most important books in the Indian canon. India had 6 systems of philosophy, and yes, India has been a system of India has been a place of many diverse systems of thought, and that diversity is actually integrated into a holistic framework in the Bhagavad Gita. The 6 systems of philosophy, if one reads carefully, which were the which are considered by many the very significant philosophical contributions of India, they all find not just mention but integration in the Bhagavad-Gita. And we see that the great stalwart teachers of the Indian tradition, that we have right from Shankaracharya, who was in the 6th, 7th centuries, Ramanujacharya in the 10th, 11th centuries, then Madhacharya in the 12th, 13th centuries. So that period is maybe a 50-100 years back or forth. But the point is, since that time, they have all commented on the Bhagavad Gita, and they consider the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita to be one of the most important books. So at that time, there were Pasthanatraya, which were considered 3 primary books for determining for authoritative wisdom, and among them, the Bhagavad Gita was one of them. And at a popular level for people, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and the Bhagavatam, they had huge appeal. But still, the Bhagavad Gita had tremendous theological influence, philosophical relevance, and literary eminence in the Indian tradition. And that became all the more, if we consider the country India, the concept of the conception of Aryavarta, the land of the Aryans, that is widespread. But at the same time, that has been existing for a long time. But the concept of India as a nation with its national flag, with its national sense of identity, that became especially prominent as a response to British rule from the 17th, 18th century onwards. And during that time, the Bhagavad Gita also became definingly important. The sense of India as a nation was there in the past also. That's why we have Shankaracharya going in the 4 directions to the 4 pithas, and in the 4 corners of India, he established the 4 centers of learning. And similarly, there have been the great acharyas who traveled various parts of the country, but especially that sense of national identity and integration became prominent with the country uniting to counter the exploitative rule of Britain. And it is in that independence struggle which shaped the identity of India as a nation state as it exists now, the Bhagavad Gita played a defining role. Now, broadly, the leaders who fought for independence were in 2 distinct categories: those who wanted to protest by non-violent parliamentary or non-parliamentary means, but by non-violent means, and those who wanted to rebel using violence if necessary. And significantly, both of them took refuge in the Gita. Now, there were people who were deemed as rebels and even called terrorists by the British government. Of course, these people were not terrorists; they were simply protesting against the exploitation. But the point is that they used the Bhagavad Gita for inspiring themselves and for inspiring Indians. So for some patriots whom the British government deemed as terrorists, actually name can do a lot of labeling. These patriots, when they were arrested and they were sent for hanging, many of them, they actually, Dhingra and others, they went with a Bhagavad Gita in their hands to the gallows, confidently. So the point is that the Bhagavad Gita inspired them. And at that time, there were people who commented on the Gita, and they said that actually their reasoning was that Krishna, just as he inspired people to fight against adharma, similarly we should fight against the British culture and the British rule, which is destroying the dharmic culture and the dharmic wisdom of India, and we should strive to give India independence. Now, whatever way their interpretation of the Gita might have been, whether that interpretation was in accordance with the wisdom of the Gita or not, the point is that they derived inspiration from it. The point is that the Bhagavad Gita inspired and influenced them. And similarly, we had the non-violent, more or less parliamentary sort of protest, or non-parliamentary, but still non-violent protest, that was led by Gandhiji, and he was very foundationally influenced by the Gita. And he has famously said that when doubts haunt me, when disappointment stares me in the face, and when I see not a ray of hope on the horizon, At that time, I remember a verse from the Gita, and I start smiling even in the face of overwhelming disappointment. Those who meditate on the Gita will derive fresh meanings from it every day. Similarly, so here Gandhi is not talking about the he's talking about the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom in a universalist sense of giving strength and hope amidst times of test and deprivation and weakness. And he's talking about this universal spiritually uplifting potency of the Gita's wisdom. So there were other leaders who derived inspiration from the Gita, and thus if we look at India's formational history in the pre-independence period and during the independence period, the Bhagavad Gita was a book that influenced and shaped the destiny of India far more than any other book. So in terms of historical significance, no book has had as much influence in shaping and giving spiritual substance to the formation of India as the Bhagavad Gita. And so this influence extends back for thousands of years, even in our known historical documented records. But more than that, it has become increasingly influential in the post independence, in the just the pre-independence and the post-independence times. Now moving forward, if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, its message is also of universal relevance. One of the criticisms that is often leveled against the Indian tradition is that, Indian wisdom tradition, is that it is too world renouncing, it is too world rejecting, it is too passive. But yes, there were these two modes of growth, of inner and outer growth, that were talked about in the Indian tradition. One was through work and the other was through renunciation. And in general, the renunciation of work was thought of as higher. But the Bhagavad Gita brought about a remarkable integration when it talked about renunciation not of work, not renunciation of work, but renunciation in work. So it talked about working in a spirit of selflessness. And today, where everyone is, where the world is now slowly but surely and recognizing the grim consequences of self-centered, exploitative, materialistic work, a spirit of working where what's in it for me is the primary defining criteria by which people act. In such a situation, recognizing the principles that the Bhagavad Gita provides for selfless action, that can be a tremendously empowering individual and social corrective that enables us to balance our position in this world by decreasing our ecological footprint, by minimizing the ecological damage that we cause, sociological disruption that we cause by our indiscriminate indulgences and exploitations. So the point is that the Bhagavad Gita can bring in a sense of balance by not talking about the otherworldliness that has often been present in the Indian tradition, that was counterbalanced by the Bhagavad Gita's spiritual worldliness. That means, yes, one is in the world, not worldly in the sense of being materialistic, but worldly in the sense of being active in the world, but with a spiritual purpose. And this insight of the Bhagavad Gita of our spiritual side having eminence, not just eminence but preeminence, because it is the spiritual that shapes the material, it is the spiritual that guides the material, and it is the spiritual that actually fulfills the material. Today we live in a world where the material side is being improved in many ways through technology, but the spiritual side has been degraded. So Martin Luther King said that we live in an age of guided missiles and misguided men. So we have gained control over the outer world, but we have not gained much control over the inner world. In fact, we have lost more and more control, and that is why we have the horrible tragedy in the world that people often commit suicide. Not just one or two, but more than 1 million people commit suicide every year according to WHO statistics. That means over 100 people commit suicide practically within a matter of few minutes. And it is a scary statistic. So more than number of people who are being killed in terrorist attacks, in wars, in murders, more than that, more than number of people who are killed by others, and number of people who are being killed by themselves. And this indicates something profoundly wrong in the way we are living. So the materialism that is impelling people to seek identity and value and success in externals, that same materialism, when people get frustrated in their pursuit of externals, they get so frustrated that they feel, what is there to live for? Better let me end my life. But it is such a time that we need spiritual wisdom the most, and not just spiritual wisdom in a sense of just renounce the world, but spiritual, be in the world but be not of the world. Padma patramibam bhasa. Krishna says that so the lotus is in water but it doesn't get wet, it doesn't get dirtied with dirty water. Similarly, the Bhagavad-Gita teaches us how we can, by understanding our spiritual identity and by cultivating spiritual consciousness, be in this world but not be sucked in by the selfish morasses that are spread all over the world today. And further, the Bhagavad-Gita offers a non-sectarian call of love. It concludes with Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Sarva dharman parityajya. Give up all varieties of external religiosities and just focus on the principle of love for God. Just principle of love of God. So here we see the unifying conclusion of the Gita. Yes, there can be many different religions, there can be many different conceptions of what one is to do, but the Bhagavad Gita says, let them all conclude in love. Let them all conclude in the principle of love. Love for God and love for all living beings in relationship with God. So this is the universalist message of the Gita, where rather than focusing on diversities which no doubt exist and which the Bhagavad Gita also acknowledges, but the Bhagavad Gita says, Mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Krishna says that all people are on my path. So in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that everyone is on the way to God ultimately. And in that way the Bhagavad Gita offers us a very universalist understanding, which is not at all exclusivist. Not saying that this is the only way and all other ways are false. No, it accommodates the different people according to their individual spiritual inclinations and gives them appropriate levels at which they can act. And lastly, we can also look at the global appeal of the Bhagavad Gita. So we have many of the eminent thinkers in the world, they have actually acknowledged the glory of the Gita. Now, two of the Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, they are considered the American transcendentalists, and especially Emerson is considered to be the one of the foremost thinkers who shaped the modern American ethos. And he said that when he read the Bhagavad Gita, it was as if an empire spoke to him. The voice of an old intelligence that had heard and addressed the questions that exercise us today. And he says that when he read the Bhagavad Gita, it was a magnificent day in his life. And Henry David Thoreau was also another great American thinker. He withdrew from the world to stay in a forest and contemplate deeply on the nature of and purpose of life. And at that time, when he studied the Bhagavad Gita, it made a profound impression on him. And he said that the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita is so stupendous and cosmogonal that as compared to it, all the Western literature that we have seems puny and insignificant. The point here is again not one upsmanship of India versus the West, but the point is that the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita is so spellbinding that this is what a Western mind who has no nationalist agenda to try to promote the Bhagavad Gita, this is a mind which is appreciating the Bhagavad Gita for its breathtakingly deep and penetrating wisdom. And similarly, there are many other thinkers who have appreciated the Bhagavad Gita. So, for example, Huxley said that this is the most systematic statement of the perennial philosophy of the systematic spiritual evolution that people can have. And similarly, there are others. Schlegel, he loved the Bhagavad Gita so much that when he was dying under his bed, while dying, he kept the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, Schopenhauer, he said that the Bhagavad Gita has been my solace in my life, and it will be my solace in death. So like that, there have been many thinkers who all over the world have appreciated the Bhagavad Gita. And it will be very unfortunate, and it will be actually an injustice to India's glorious national legacy if, in the name of considering the Bhagavad Gita to be the book of one religion or one religious group, we deprive modern Indians of the opportunity to know the glory of their national legacy. When I read these quotes, actually I read these quotes of many Western thinkers appreciating the wisdom of the Gita many years after I started studying the Gita. I was born in India. I was born in a family where I kept hearing the Gita. I memorized some verses of the Gita. And even before I was introduced to Bhakti Yoga, I was used to recite Gita, participate in competitions of Gita recitation. And as I grew up and I came to college, I read a couple of books, commentaries on the Gita also. But nowhere, neither in my school education nor in my extracurricular reading, whether it be through newspapers or magazines or whatever, nowhere did I come to know that the Bhagavad Gita is a book that has been widely appreciated by some of modernity's greatest thinkers. So now, why is it that a person who is in India doesn't come to know through any of the mainstream channels of education about the glory of an Indian literature? About not just the glory, about how it has been appreciated and lauded by people in different parts of the world. So every country celebrates its national legacy and preserves it and perpetuates it, especially if that legacy has earned it a place of pride in the global in the world's eyes. So the Bhagavad Gita is a defining part of India's national legacy, from the point of view of historical significance, from the point of view of the message relevance, of spiritualization of work, of not renunciation of work but renunciation in work, and in terms of the global appeal and appreciation that it has got. So if after knowing this position of the Gita, still, because if we focus only on this one fact that the Bhagavad Gita is the book that is considered to be the religious book of one particular group of people, and we stay fixated on that, then we don't recognize that the contribution, the impact that the Gita has had on India's history and India's culture and India's world perception extends far beyond that particular contribution of the Gita as the sacred book of one particular religious group. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita offers this message to everyone. The Bhagavad Gita offers a message of a vision of God who is the God of all people. As the God who is the Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya Murtaya Sambhavantiya Tasam Brahma Madhyonir Aham Bija Pradapita. The Bhagavad Gita does not identify itself as the book of any particular religious group. It actually offers universal wisdom that can offer universal enrichment and empowerment for anyone and everyone who reads and applies it. And given this universalist nature of the Bhagavad Gita, its wisdom, and the enormous significance of the Gita in the formation and perception of India and the world, it would be a travesty of justice to reduce the Gita to the book of a particular religious group and thereby deny it its due place of influence. But if you objectively, not in a prejudiced way, look at the Gita's contribution, look at the Gita's content, then the Bhagavad Gita does eminently deserve to be the national book of India. Thank you. Hare Krishna.